It was close to midnight when the app pinged, that soft, hollow chime that cuts through the quiet like a small decision you'll regret later. Pickup, mile marker 224, Route 66. Destination, Flagstaff. No houses, no towns, no reason anyone should be standing there. But the map was clear. A single pin dropped in the middle of the Arizona desert. I almost declined. Then again, nights like that pay my rent, the lonely miles no one else wants. The highway shimmered under the moon, still breathing out heat from the day. The asphalt glowed faintly like it remembered sunlight. My high beams carved a pale tunnel through dust and sage, the sound of tires the only heartbeat for miles. Then I saw him. A figure standing dead center between two reflectors, arm raised halfway, like he couldn't decide if he wanted to be rescued. Tan jacket, dark pants, still as a fence post. He didn't wave, didn't move, just waited. I slowed, the car humming with that strange mix of curiosity and warning. When my headlights touched his face, he smiled. Small, polite, and almost rehearsed, the kind of smile that belonged in an old black-and-white photo. He leaned down to the open window. Uber? His voice was calm, low, like it had been echoing inside his chest for a long time before he spoke. "Yeah," I said. "Flagstaff?" He nodded once. "That's perfect." He slid into the back seat without another word. The door clicked shut with an old-fashioned weight, and suddenly the car felt smaller. I checked the mirror. He sat neatly, hands folded on his lap, posture straight. Too straight. Most passengers sprawl, check their phones, mutter about playlists. This one looked like he'd been waiting years for this exact ride. As we merged back onto the highway, the GPS glitched. The screen blinked white, then blank. No map, no route, just a blue dot pulsing in a digital void. "Guess we're off the grid," I joked. He smiled faintly. "That's all right. I know the way." Something about the way he said it, steady, certain, made me grip the wheel tighter. The desert outside looked endless, but under the hum of the tires there was another sound. Something subtle, almost too low to notice, like a whisper pressed against the glass, trying to get in.
He didn't talk for the first few miles, just sat there, upright and polite, staring out the window like he was memorizing the dark. The desert slid by in slow motion. Broken fences, abandoned billboards, the kind of emptiness that starts to feel personal after a while. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded softer than before, like it came from somewhere far away. "You're the first car I've seen in hours." "Yeah," I said. "Not much traffic out here past midnight." He nodded. "Used to be different. This road was alive once." A pause. "Now it's just the ghosts driving." I laughed nervously, waiting for him to join in, but he didn't. He turned his head slightly, his reflection catching in the rear view. The light from the dashboard painted his face a strange shade of blue-green, too calm, too clean for a man out here in the middle of nowhere. "You drive nights often?" "Yeah," I said. "Pays better." He smiled faintly. "I get it. Nights tell the truth, daylight tries to cover." The words hit weirdly, like poetry from someone who didn't want to sound poetic. Then he looked back out the window and said quietly, "I used to drive this same stretch for work years ago." "Oh yeah? Doing what?" Tires, sales, back when every gas station was still open and you could smell the coffee before you saw the lights. He chuckled once, dry. You'd be surprised how lonely this road gets. I glanced at him again in the mirror. He wasn't smiling anymore. "What happened to your job?" I asked. He hesitated, like he had to check with himself before answering. "Things changed. Everything closed up. People stopped fixing what they broke." The GPS still showed nothing, just the dot pulsing faintly in all that digital emptiness. He noticed me glance at it and said, almost teasing, "That's the thing about roads like this. They remember where to go, even if the map forgets." The car hit a small dip, a soft thud that made the air tremble for a second. I smelled something faint, sweet, familiar. Old tobacco, maybe, but it was gone before I could place it. I reached for the radio to break the silence, but it only spat static, like distant breathing, too soft to call noise. When I looked up, his eyes were still on the horizon, unfocused. "You ever feel," he asked quietly, "like the night is watching you back?" I didn't answer, because right then, I did. The road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon pulled tight. No lights, no towns, just desert breathing under the moon. He started talking again, voice low and even, like he'd rehearsed it many times. "I used to make this drive all the time. Flagstaff, Winslow, Gallup. Sold tires to small stations before the highways killed the small routes." He looked out the window as if the land still remembered him. "Back then, every gas station had its own smell. Grease, rain, and burnt coffee. People knew your name before you got out of the truck. Funny thing about the desert, it keeps faces longer than the towns do." I smiled politely, though he wasn't really talking to me. "Must have been lonely," I said. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not when she was with me." That was the first time he mentioned her. "My wife," he added, almost softly. "She loved this road. Said it looked different every night. Said the moon changed its mind out here." I nodded, glancing in the mirror. His expression had softened, just a little. A man remembering something fragile. "She used to make me stop for pie at a diner near Twin Arrows. Place had a jukebox that only played sad songs, even if you picked happy ones." He smiled at the memory, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Burned down. Summer of '94. Whole thing went up before sunrise. No one ever rebuilt it." I hesitated. "That's sad." "Yeah." He looked out the window again. "She loved that place." A pause. "She died, not far from it." The words came out almost casually, but something in his tone froze the air between us. "Car flipped," he said. "Right past the bend before Two Guns. I was behind her. We'd taken separate cars that night. The sky was clear, not a sound in the world. Then I saw her headlights roll down the embankment like falling stars." I didn't know what to say. The hum of the tires filled the silence for us. He took a slow breath. "They say the wind carries voices here, that if you listen close, you can still hear the ones who never made it home." For a moment, I thought I did. A faint sound, not quite a whisper, not quite a sigh, brushing against the glass. I tightened my grip on the wheel and didn't ask him anything else. We drove another 10 miles in silence. The air inside the car felt heavier now, like the temperature had dropped, even though the heater was still humming. My ears had that strange pressure you get before a storm, except the sky was perfectly clear. He hadn't moved since he told me about his wife. Still straight-backed, hands folded neatly, eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the windshield, as if the desert were showing him a movie only he could see. I tried to break the quiet. So, do you still live nearby? He tilted his head slightly, as if the question had come from a great distance. Not exactly, he said after a long pause, but I come back. Family out here? I asked. He smiled, not the kind that reaches the eyes, but the kind you wear when you've practiced it too long. You could say that. Something about the way he said it made me wish I hadn't asked. Outside, the desert began to blur past faster. The moonlight hit the road in wide silver stripes, flashing across his face like the slow turning of a projector reel. His reflection in the rearview mirror flickered. For a half-second, it looked like the seat behind him was empty. I blinked hard, checked again. He was there, still and calm. My pulse picked up anyway. He pointed suddenly out the window. Used to be a diner there. Best cherry pie in the state. I looked. Nothing. Just sand, brush, and the vague outline of a ruined sign half swallowed by dust. You sure? I asked. He nodded once. My wife and I stopped there the night before she died. The smell hit then. Faint, but unmistakable. Old tobacco. Warm, sweet, almost comforting. I glanced around the car. You smoke? He smiled again, small, apologetic. Not anymore. The air grew colder. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield for just a second, and I knew that couldn't be right. It was still nearly 80 degrees outside. The radio, dead since the start of the trip, crackled suddenly. One sharp burst of static, then silence again. He didn't react, didn't even blink. Finally, he said softly, You ever think some places remember us more than we remember them? I wanted to answer, but my throat was dry. The hum of the tires had turned into something else, slower, deeper, like a voice trying to form words under the asphalt. We didn't speak for a long time after that. The only sound was the steady hum of the tires and the soft rattle of loose change in the cup holder. The desert outside looked endless, pale ridges glowing faintly in the moonlight, like bones under thin skin. He sat perfectly still. Not a cough, not a shift, not even a breath I could hear. Every other passenger I've ever had eventually moves, adjusts the seat, clears their throat, sighs, but he didn't. It was like the air around him was holding its breath, too. The silence grew heavier. I turned the radio knob again out of habit. Nothing, just a faint hiss, like wind trapped inside the speakers. I switched it off and instantly regretted it. Somehow the silence without static felt louder. You okay back there? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, Do you believe people can stay? I frowned. Stay? After they're gone, he said, eyes fixed on the window. Not ghosts, just pieces, bits that don't move on. I hesitated, my fingers tightening on the steering wheel. I don't know. Maybe. Depends what you mean by stay. He smiled faintly, still looking outside. This road has a memory. Every year it shows me what I lost. The word sent a chill through me.
A low rumble passed under the car, like we'd driven over something hollow. The vibration lasted longer than it should have. I checked the mirror. The road behind us was smooth, empty. When I looked back at him, the dashboard light caught his face at a strange angle. For a second, it looked wrong, not monstrous, just off, like the light was bending around him instead of over him. I blinked, and he was normal again, calm, polite, still. The smell of tobacco returned, stronger this time, sweet and old, mixed with something colder, like rain on metal. "Used to smoke that same blend," he murmured, almost to himself. "Every time she got in the car, she'd make me put it out." I didn't ask who she was. I already knew. The silence came back thicker than before, pressing against my chest, against my ears. It wasn't empty anymore. It had a shape now, a weight. And somewhere inside it, I thought I heard breathing. Not mine, not his. Something slow, patient, just under the noise of the tires. Twin arrows appeared on the horizon, two pale, broken shapes stabbing up from the desert. I'd seen them before, old highway relics, fading paint, half-collapsed foundations. They looked like punctuation marks the desert didn't finish reading. "I'm gonna stop here," I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Need coffee before I fall asleep at the wheel." He didn't answer. I slowed the car, turning off the main lane toward a flickering gas station sign. The pavement crackled under the tires. A few moths bounced off the windshield like soft rain. When I parked beside the pumps, the engine idled for a moment, then fell quiet. The silence outside was thick enough to touch. I turned around to ask if he wanted anything. The seat was empty. At first, my brain refused to process it, like it was buffering. The seatbelt still fastened, the indentation of his weight still there, but no one sitting in it. "Hey," I said, my voice too small for the space. "Tom?" No answer. I checked the rear floor, the seat beside him, even the passenger side. The doors were still locked, child locks engaged, same as always. No open windows, no sound of footsteps outside. The air felt suddenly cold. That same smell again. Tobacco, faint and dry, hanging in the cabin like the ghost of a memory. I stepped out of the car. The desert was silent, perfectly still. Not even wind this time. The fluorescent lights above the gas pumps buzzed weakly, flickering in and out. I looked across the lot. No other cars. No clerk inside the small building. My heart started to race, the way it does when logic starts to crack. I opened the back door again. The seat was still warm. "Tom," I said again, louder now. "You can't just—" Something behind me shifted, a soft rustle, like fabric brushing metal. I turned fast, scanning the empty road. Nothing. Only then did I notice the sound. The radio had turned itself on. Just static, a steady hiss that filled the car, like a voice trying to form words but never finding them. I leaned inside and hit the power. It didn't turn off. Then, faintly, under the static, a woman's voice, singing. A few bars of something slow and sad. It lasted only a second before fading back to silence, and when it stopped, the smell of tobacco vanished too. The bell above the door gave a tired jingle when I stepped inside. The light was too bright, the kind that hums just a little too loud, like it's trying to drown out the silence. The air smelled like burnt coffee and old dust, a mix that clung to your clothes as soon as you entered. Behind the counter sat kid, maybe 20, bored, scrolling through his phone with the indifference of someone who had seen every kind of weird at 2 a.m. "Evening," he said without looking up. I nodded. You seen anyone come in before me? Tall guy, tan jacket? The kid finally looked up. Not in the last hour. He gave me a lazy once-over. Why? I hesitated. The truth sounded insane out loud. Picked someone up a few miles back. He was in my car 1 minute, gone the next. The kid blinked, unimpressed. Yeah, that happens sometimes. What? People vanish. Happens more than you'd think out here. Usually they were never really there to begin with. I stared at him, waiting for the joke. It didn't come. He pointed lazily toward a corkboard behind the counter. You mean that guy? Pinned up among sun-bleached flyers and missing dog posters was a newspaper clipping, yellowed, edges curling. In the photo, a car upside down at the bottom of an embankment, emergency lights washing the dirt in gray. Beside it, a man, tan jacket. I stepped closer. The headline read, Traveling Salesman Dies on Route 66, October 9th, 1995. The date hit me like a heartbeat in my throat. October 9th. Tonight's date. That's him, I whispered. That's the guy. The clerk frowned. You serious? Yeah, he was in my car. Just now. Said his name was Tom. Said his wife died on this road. The kid held up his hand, stopping me. People see him every few years, always around this time. You're not the first. I felt the blood drain from my face. He shrugged, grabbed his coffee cup. Old story, man. Some say he's still driving, others say he's looking for her. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was tight. That's impossible. Out here, everything's possible until morning. The buzzing lights flickered once, twice, and for just a second, the smell of sweet tobacco drifted through the air again, faint but real. The kid wrinkled his nose. You smell that? But I was already backing toward the door. I couldn't stop looking at that photo. The headline, the grain, the faint shadow of the photographer's flash frozen in the corner. It all looked too alive, like the paper was still breathing. Mind if I take a closer look? I asked. The kid shrugged. Knock yourself out. Just don't steal it. Boss gets weird about his local legends. I leaned in. The newsprint was yellowed and soft, like old skin. The date at the top read October 9, 1995, exactly 30 years ago to the day. The article was short, just a few lines. Local salesman Thomas Reed, 32, was killed late Tuesday night when his car overturned off Route 66 near Twin Arrows. His wife Ellen was also found at the scene. Authorities believe heavy winds contributed to the crash. The picture beneath it showed the wreck. Headlights pointed at the sky, glass scattered like ice. And beside it, the man in the tan jacket. His face was caught mid-turn, eyes half closed, expression calm. Except, the more I looked, the less calm it seemed. The grain around his eyes almost moved. A trick of the light, maybe. But for a split second, I could swear he was looking at me. I stepped back fast, nearly bumping the counter. You okay? The clerk asked. Yeah, just thought I saw something. He sipped his coffee, unbothered. Everyone says that. My uncle swears he smelled smoke once right here in the store. Said it was that guy's pipe tobacco. The smell hit me again. Faint, sweet, unmistakable. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I smelled it too. The kid grinned like he'd caught me believing. Then you're officially part of the legend. I turned back to the clipping one last time. Something in the background caught my eye. A reflection in the shattered car window. It was hard to see through the grain, but it looked like another figure, standing just behind the photographer. A woman. White dress, long hair, face turned toward the wreck. There was no mention of her in the article. No caption. Nothing. "Hey," I said, pointing. "You see that? Behind him?" The clerk squinted. "What, the tree?" "No," I said quietly. "Never mind." I stepped away, suddenly aware of how dry the air felt, and how every hum and flicker of light seemed louder than before. The kid was still talking about ghost stories, but I wasn't listening. Because as I turned toward the door, I realized something. The faint static from the radio outside had started again. And this time, it wasn't just noise. It was music.
The night air hit me like cold glass when I stepped outside. The station lights buzzed behind me, flickering in a slow rhythm, almost like breathing. My car waited by the pumps, dark, silent, still fogged on the inside from when I'd left it. For a moment I just stood there, keys in hand, listening. No wind, no insects, not even the far-off hum of trucks. Just that faint sound coming from inside the car. Static again, low and steady, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. I opened the door. The smell rolled out first. Tobacco and something else underneath. Sharp and cold, like wet concrete after rain. The radio had turned itself back on. A slow country song played through the static, a woman's voice, soft and distant, as if coming from the far end of a tunnel. I didn't recognize the words, but I didn't need to. It was her. I sat behind the wheel, my pulse hammering. The song kept playing, the melody warbling through bad reception. It didn't sound like a recording. It sounded like someone humming along right beside me. All right. Okay. I turned the key. The engine started on the first try, smooth, almost eager. I pulled back onto the road. The white mine slid past, hypnotic, perfect. My headlights caught every curve, every mile marker. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for one thing. The reflection in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just the glare from the dashboard. But no, there was a figure in the back seat again. Tan jacket, calm smile, looking right at me. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. "Tom?" I said, barely breathing. He didn't answer. He just stared, that same polite expression as before, like nothing unusual had happened at all. Then he said, quietly, almost kindly, "You should slow down. This next curve, it's where it happened." My stomach dropped. I looked at the speedometer. I wasn't going fast, but suddenly the car felt like it was moving too quickly, like gravity itself was shifting beneath the wheels. I slammed the brakes. The tires shuddered, headlights cutting across the sand. When I finally stopped, the road was empty again. The seat behind me was too. Only the smell remained. Sweet, old, familiar. And when I looked up, the dashboard clock read 12:03, the exact same time it had when the trip began.
By the time I reached Flagstaff, the sky was beginning to pale. The kind of washed-out gray that doesn't look like morning yet, just the ghost of night trying to linger. The streets were empty. I pulled into a diner parking lot. the kind with cracked asphalt and a neon sign that buzzed like an insect caught behind glass. I sat there for a while, engine running, hand still gripping the wheel. Trip log, empty. No fare, no pickup, no record. Like the ride had never happened. The smell of tobacco clung faintly to the seats, soft and stale, refusing to fade. I rolled down the windows, but the air outside was colder than it should have been. Inside the diner, everything felt too normal. Bright lights, cheap coffee, people talking about weather and football. I wanted to tell someone what happened, but every sentence sounded stupid in my head. I picked up a dead man. He disappeared, and the radio played his wife's song. Yeah, that would go well. So I just sat there, stirring cold coffee, watching my reflection tremble in the surface. At some point, a man at the counter glanced at me and said, "Rough night?" I almost laughed. "You could say that?" He nodded toward the window and said, "Route 66'll do that to you. My dad used to drive it. Said some folks never really left." I looked outside. The road shimmered in the early light, a faint mirage twisting across the horizon. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw someone standing there. Tall, tan jacket, hand raised like he was waiting for a ride. Then a truck roared past, and he was gone. I paid, stepped outside, and breathed in the desert air. It still carried that same faint sweetness, the same memory of smoke. When I got back in the car, the radio clicked on by itself. No static this time, just silence, clean and complete. I checked the rear view mirror before starting the engine. Nothing there. But when I put the car in drive, the faintest whisper came through the speakers, a woman's voice, almost a sigh. "Thank you." The words were soft, distant, gone before I could be sure I'd heard 'em at all. I drove east, toward the sunrise. The highway stretched out like an open scar, and for the first time it felt like it was breathing with me. Maybe he'd finally found her. Or maybe the road just needed a new name to remember. I still drive nights sometimes, but I don't take pickups from Route 66 anymore.